And once again, I'd like to welcome everybody back to the Buffalo History Channel. Thank you for your continued support of this platform. And let me start off by saying in advance, happy Juneteenth. Happy forthcoming Juneteenth. And
Welcome.
you see the young lady that I have sitting here with me today. You might remember her from I think a couple of years ago, I believe, or maybe a year ago,
Yeah,
I think, that
yeah.
she we we are both Juneteenth legacies, and
Mhm.
she released a book initially, a book called the Juneteenth Story, which was very well received. Very well received. You saw the last time you saw her, she was getting ready to release it. We're going to first start off by talking about how the aftermath of the release of that book, because she did do a very special presentation in the city of Buffalo. But the main thing we're here to talk about is that she has another book that's out now called the Juneteenth Cookbook. And for some reason, Juneteenth and cookbook, that just goes hand in hand, because one of the things you think about during Juneteenth is
Food.
definitely the food and all the vendors that are going to be out there. So we're going to hear all about it right here on the Buffalo History Channel. Once again, Alliah, Juneteenth Legacy, welcome back to the Buffalo History Channel.
Hey, Doug, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure, and it's really hard to believe that it's been 2 years since the previous
Yes.
interview. So it's wild. Time really does fly. It's
Amazing,
yeah, yeah.
amazing. We had you on and you talked about the Juneteenth story, and it was amazing, to just hear about the the just the fact that that book came out, that you made an effort to create this book, and certainly under the influence of your grandfather,
Mhm.
Judson Price,
Yes.
the great Judson Price, Buffalo legend, certainly in his own right, as well as Buffalo Juneteenth founder.
Mhm.
Uh, let's go back. Let's go right back to when you did the presentation in Buffalo.
Yeah, sure.
Um, you had a very special event at the Meriwether Library. I know I
Mhm.
I actually had a hand in it as well. I was certainly honored
Mhm.
to do that with a part of the Build documentary series. Take us
Mhm.
back to that event. What was it like?
Yeah, so that event was surreal. It was really like a homecoming, like only Buffalo could do.
Of
And
course.
I mean, to provide additional context, so this was on the Friday before Juneteenth of 2022. Now, I mean, everybody remembers this was the first Juneteenth back since the pandemic, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, it also wound up being our first Juneteenth after the May 14th shooting.
Yes.
And the event itself was held at the Meriwether Library on Jefferson, which I'm sure many people know is directly across the street from Tops on Jefferson. So so much happened in that aftermath. The book came out on May 3rd, and I was actually sitting in this very seat when I heard about what happened at Tops, and it was surreal. I know a lot of people are, it's were affected in various ways, directly and indirectly, by the shooting, but unfortunately, what wound up happening as a silver lining of it is so many people were able to see um, the resilience and the strength of the Black community in Buffalo, and to understand what so many people have been working on to try to eliminate some of the structural barriers that have been put in place for so many people there for a long time. So at that time, there was actually national attention on Buffalo and what we were dealing with. So people coming into Juneteenth that year, there were a lot of people who were afraid because, frankly, if somebody wanted to come to Buffalo, Tops in Buffalo, just to find a number of Black people, then surely Juneteenth would be a target too. So there are a lot of people who were afraid to celebrate. But we were also looking forward to celebrating because we knew that this would be one of the first times we'd all be together, um, since the pandemic. And also, I think there was so much celebration around the fact that I was able to illuminate Buffalo's role in Juneteenth through the book too, which is also something that was being seen, nationally. So there was just so many feelings coming into this event. When I do presentations now, I talk to people about them. I give them that context because that's something that I could never have ever predicted and never would have wanted to predict or experience. But I think, you know, the pride that so many people that I knew throughout different moments of my life, from my family who's obviously known me since, I was born, to classmates and neighbors and my friends and my friends' parents.
Of
It
course.
was just such a moment of pride because I was able to at least illuminate all the good that our community has been doing, especially within the context of celebrating Juneteenth and illuminating this holiday. But also, to talk about my own personal journey of, being in more of a corporate setting and realizing that I needed to chase something that was more creative, and to kind of see how it's manifested has been really, really powerful. So that it was emotional at times. Fortunately,
I can
you were able
imagine.
to provide, yeah, you were able to provide some wonderful, footage and context of Juneteenth over the years, which I think a lot of people enjoyed because, of course, some people saw themselves, in their hot pants, from back in the 70s and the 80s. But it was just, a really, I think it was a good like rah rah for like let's come back to and celebrate together. And I think maybe hopefully for some of the people that were afraid to come back and celebrate in person because of fear and understandable fear that they might be targeted by people who truly hate Black joy. It wound up being a really just such a wonderful event. And I'm so thankful, to the board president, to Kim, the board president of the library, for orchestrating the event and for everybody for helping bring it together, from you for providing content, to my cousin Karen who read a selection from the book. It was just it was really just beyond my wildest dreams. Even my little cousin, who's not little, he's giant, he was like, you need security, and I was like, you know what, you might be right. So he was there. So he's a bouncer sometimes. So he was standing next to me and he was security while I was signing. And I was like, I don't see myself as a celebrity by any stretch, but you know what? People are crazy. So you just
Yeah.
never know. You never know. But it was really a beautiful homecoming, but the context was certainly bittersweet.
Yeah, it certainly was bittersweet. I mean, I know I was regretful that I wasn't able to be there myself. I got stuck back in Buffalo, but I had a chance to attend the Annapolis, Maryland's Juneteenth. But the way I would look at the Juneteenth over on back in Buffalo, and it was a party. It was
It
definitely a
was a
party.
party.
So I made it a point to come back the following year, and that was my first
Yeah.
time back since the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we move on now, and you have the Juneteenth Cookbook. So this is the sequel. So what
Yes.
what went into that? What inspired that?
Yeah, so the Juneteenth story itself, just giving people context, it really talked about the history of the holiday and how it became a holiday, ending with, the moment in 2021 when it became a national holiday on the calendar. And the book did really well. And my publisher approached me about doing a follow up, and they said, there's no Juneteenth cookbook for kids and for families, and it'd be really nice to bring something together. And I was like, I think that actually would be pretty cool. And for people that might be familiar with the original Juneteenth story, it kind of follows a little girl and her grandparents, which is actually me and my grandparents, through the book. So
Mhm.
this time we actually made the cover. And there's a little
Oh,
Easter
okay.
egg right there with based on a portrait of my maternal great grandmother,
Okay.
which is really special. And we wanted to bring together something that actually activated Juneteenth celebrations for families, for educators, for libraries, for community centers, through food. And as you mentioned before, you can't. I mean, when we think about Juneteenth, people celebrate in different ways, but in Buffalo, we really celebrated around the festival. And when I think about the sensorial cues of Juneteenth for me, the first thing is smell. Like I smell
Yes.
barbecue. I smell
Yes.
barbecue. I hear generators. You can
Yes. Yes.
literally
The
taste. You
generators.
can taste the charcoal before you even taste the barbecue chicken or whatever you're gonna have. The jerk. Whatever you're gonna have. And the snow cones. I know I talked about those before.
Snow
Snow
cones.
cones. They hold a special place in my heart. So the food is such a crucial part of it. And of course,
Yeah.
there are certain traditions that are tied to Juneteenth and the food. So we were like, this would be really wonderful to create an opportunity for kids and their families to come together through food and celebration of the holiday and truly Black cookout culture. Because I mean, let's face it, a lot of food that we eat on Juneteenth, we'll eat on the 4th of July, or we'll just eat a Memorial Day barbecue, etc.
True.
But as I was thinking about it more, so it's actually called the full title is the Juneteenth Cookbook: Recipes and Activities for Kids and Families to Celebrate, which is a total mouthful, but we just call it the Juneteenth Cookbook. So it has recipes in it, but it also has activities for people to activate around learning the history of the holiday, which I think is really important for centering too. So the book itself is broken up into different sections. There's one for beverages, for appetizers, for entrees, sides, and dessert. And within each of them, we also have different moments that are really intended to activate it in other ways beyond food. So we have like, let's create, let's make, let's play, let's dance, and let's explore. So for instance, I know we talked the last time about how my grandfather was big into screen printing and created some of the original Juneteenth paraphernalia. So I wanted to make sure to honor that. In one of the sections we have called Let's Create, for instance, where people can actually make some of their own Juneteenth gear if they'd like to, using some simple techniques that they can recreate at home. We also have moments for people to make everything from the Africa medallions, kind of like I don't know if you remember those from the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I wore quite a few of them.
Exactly. So, I mean, the idea is to bring some of these things in. There's field trips that people can take depending on where they live in the country to Juneteenth festivals. There's a lot in there, but the food is really paramount. And I was fortunate to work with an amazing recipe developer, because I was like, I love to eat, and I know what I want to create, but I want to make sure it's excellent. So I worked with Chef Taffy Elrod, who's like a James Beard chef, and she's an expert. She calls herself the flavor fairy godmother, and she helped create some amazing recipes that we're able to put into the book.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, what I know they have you on like tour circuits, and you've done presentations. What are some of the presentations? What are some of the places that you've been to?
Yeah, so far, I was actually at Burlington, New Jersey, which is further south from here, closer to Philly. I did a presentation on my experience with Juneteenth, between the Juneteenth Story and the Juneteenth Cookbook. Last week, I was actually at the Texas Library Association conference, which is a huge convening of librarians from across the state of Texas. And I was talking to them about how they could actually use the Juneteenth Cookbook to activate their own respective Juneteenth celebrations as they create, programming for their libraries, and especially how to do it from a multi-generational angle. As you see, I'm with my grandparents on the cover, and there's so many moments in the book where people can kind of make this food together, make these activities together, and also talk about their own, relative history with them too. Just like we were talking about the medallions, for instance, right? There's plenty of grandparents and parents are like, I wore one of those, and like, this is how we can make something, of your own that you can take home and kind of be like a tribute to that. So that was really special. I also have the Montclair Literary Festival coming up, and then all throughout, I'm hoping to come to Buffalo at the end of May. We're still working out details with that one. And then throughout June, I have a number of, I live in the New Jersey area. So I have a number of events there's a Brooklyn Juneteenth Festival. Morristown, New Jersey has a Juneteenth Festival. I'll be there too. Of course, I'll be doing bookstore events in New Jersey, in Montclair, near where I am. And then we'll actually be at the Museum of Food and Drink, which is, I didn't even hear about it before, but Chef Taffy told us about it. And so we're able to work with them, and we'll be doing something at the end of June. So we have more things that are in play, and I'll be sharing all the details on social media soon. But it's a whirlwind, but it's really fun. I mean, I write, and it's very solitary, but obviously I love the talking part of it too. So it's fun, to get to interact with librarians and families, and actually even just see some of the things brought to life. When I was in Texas, I went to a wonderful bookstore in Seguin, Texas, which is a tiny little town, but everybody kind of came out, and they have a restaurant there too. And the chef created the Hoppin' John and the corn muffins with hot honey butter recipe from the cookbook, and made that one of their specials for the day, which was wonderful. But the really special thing was going to New Braunfels, which is outside of San Antonio as well. And it was a library connected to a community center and they're connected to a lot of different community agencies that actually came and helped activate some of the activities from the cookbook. So they had everything from making your own mancala board out of egg cartons, to making watermelon snow, which is a recipe in the book, which is basically our fresh food take on snow cones, using just like frozen watermelon, which is so easy and so good, and it's something that I've been doing with my kids for years. So yeah, so we're doing all kinds of stuff, and it's just really empowering to see it brought to life, because when these books start out as like an Excel spreadsheet where you're like, okay, I think I want to do this section and this section and this section and this section, but to actually see a kid holding one of the recipes that you had in mind or one of the activities you had in mind, it just shows what it's truly all about. So it's been great positive reinforcement.
Snow cones.
Yes.
A snow cone legacy.
Yeah, I know, right? So delicious. So delicious.
Yeah.
So delicious. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, you said the end of May, huh? I got a little surprise for you.
Oh, yeah?
I'm going to be back in Buffalo around the end of May.
Okay. All right. Okay, cool.
We definitely got to hook up if you're in town.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'll let you know.
Definitely.
We're trying to work with the Hollies to make an event happen. So I'm working through my publicist there. I actually had something else I had to go to around Memorial Day, but I'm hoping to make it just like a very quick trip home.
And as a matter of fact, I guess I'm going to give everybody a sneak preview here to this. We're in the process of having the Buffalo History Channel come to the AKG.
Oh, and, wonderful.
Yeah, we're going to be it's going to be in conjunction with the 514 exhibit that's there. Yeah. I'm going to be working with Julia Bottoms, the artist, and we're going to be doing a presentation where we will be talking about Figmo's Supermarket.
Oh, wow. So, okay. I think I saw one of your videos on it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's gonna be black supermarket related. So that also is in the works, and I'm waiting to hear. It's pretty much finalized, I believe, but we're just trying to get like the marketing and advertisements and stuff going on with that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be in town this coming weekend to do a keynote speech for the Afro American Historical Association.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
Looking forward to that. Yeah. Okay. For someone that might aspire to get into bookmaking or what you're doing, how did you go about getting into? I don't think we talked about this last time. How does someone go about getting into that, and what's the process of putting those books together?
Yeah, it's funny. I get inquiries all the time from people who ask, they're like, I want to write. Like, what should I do? I'm like, write. You got to start out with me. I mean, like I want to write a book. I'm like, first of all, you got to write it. Like, you just have to actually just have the gumption to just put what's in your mind down on paper or in a computer. I mean, that sounds like a very flippant response, but for some people, that's really a step that has not yet been taken. So I would encourage people to actually do that. But for me, I had ideas for books. So my kids are now 6. I mean, by the time this airs, it might be 7 and 9, but 6 and 9. And yeah, because I'm a birthday soon for my little guy.
The two legends.
Yeah, it's the two legends. They're really quite something. They keep life interesting.
Daphne's still the life of the party, right?
Oh yeah, still the life of the party. Both of them together, as Daphne and Alistair. Those two, they are, yeah. Anyways, I could go on all day about them, but this is, they'll be like, did somebody say my name? I'll take over the interview. Easily. So, when Daphne was born, because she's my oldest, I started having ideas for books for kids, which is, I think, pretty common, because all of a sudden, you're reintroduced to this world of children's literature that, I really love. Like, that was the one thing that my mom was like, when you were in kindergarten, the only thing you wanted to do was learn how to read. Like, that you wanted nothing more than to learn how to read. So it was really cool, because I was, reading these books, and there are more books that had, characters of color, but then I realized that a lot of these books weren't actually written by people of color. Although there are some amazing children's authors who are Black, who have been in the literary canon, but I'm just realizing that a lot of the ones that were really publicized were not necessarily. So I mean, I had ideas that I would just write down in Evernote or in my Apple Notes for years, and I never really thought about it until one kind of was really nudging at me. And it was kind of in the space of names and having your name pronounced properly. And I was like, okay, I have this story. At the time, it was called Alliah for long, Alliah for short. And it was nudging at me or just nagging at me. And I was like, okay, let me figure out how I can do this. So I was like, I'm just going to tell everybody I know that I'm trying to figure out how to write this book, or how to get this book out into the world. And I mean, I know people that do all kinds of interesting things, and they have friends that do interesting things. So I'm just not going to keep this a secret. So I started talking to people, and I knew that, there are a lot of people that were doing self-publishing, especially a lot of Black authors. And I understand why, because there's so many barriers to getting published. And, a lot of people that are in those places to make the choices don't necessarily look like us within publishing. So a lot of people have taken it into their own hands. So I was like, maybe I should figure out how to self-publish and find an illustrator. So I was kind of looking online and looking at illustrators and trying to figure that out. And then I actually wound up talking to a friend of a friend who had successfully self-published a book. And, she was talking about how it was fulfilling, but it's also challenging at the same time. And then I was like, maybe I want to actually try to get a real publisher and work with a real publisher and figure out this process. So, you do a lot of the wrong things. I knew a friend of a friend is like a very big name illustrator. I was like, can you ask such and such if they will illustrate my book? FYI, don't do that. Like, that's not how it works. But, eventually I started talking to people, and then a friend of mine mentioned this conference called the Quayle Conference, which is a conference for people of color in publishing. And I was going to attend it because I live in the New Jersey area, and it was in New York, and I was going to go, and it was going to be like April 2020. So I couldn't wait to go. And of course, 2020 happened, and I wound up being online. But I wound up doing some great workshops. And, also doing some like a critique with an actual editor to kind of understand a little bit more about, what worked in my manuscript and what didn't. I also joined the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, which is something, it's like for like $100, annually. And there's like a huge wealth of knowledge that they provide in this form called the book, which is like all about the ins and outs of traditional publishing and how you go about it. So I learned about, the role that an agent plays in the process. An agent plays for like actually being a steward for your work, and how you query. And I mean, querying can take a long time or a short time. And it's like writing letters or emails to agents to pitch your work so they could potentially represent you. And then they represent you to the publishers, who ultimately might, purchase your manuscript. And then they pair it with, if you're a picture book author, for instance, with an illustrator to actually illustrate your book. So, it was tricky. And then I was getting some close nudges for representation, and then it was, not quite working out. When I told, and my husband knew what I was working on, and he mentioned a friend of his was a published author of middle grade. And it was during 2020 when a lot of people would just kind of talk to each other because, and she was open to chatting, and I sent her over some of my work in advance, and she was like, oh, you're actually pretty good. So I was like, okay, phew. And I told her all about the research I had done in advance. And so she was like, okay, because, a lot of times we get inquiries from people that haven't done their own research. And my whole thing is, I'm like, Google is free, right? You can find a lot of information online. So, I mean, while, some people reach out to me with, questions and stuff like that. And I don't totally mind that. I do think that there's just a lot of information available online between, joining SCBWI, going to workshops through things like highlights, or just things that independent agents and authors and even editors offer to learn about the craft of writing stories and what the process actually looks like. So, I mean, that's a long way of saying it's a little bit of a convoluted process, but there's so many different ways to approach it. And then also, of course, there's, self-publishing, which I don't know as much about, but it's definitely a way that people can, get their work out a little bit more quickly, have more creative control over it. But the distribution can be a little bit more tricky as well.
So what are some of the other books that you've done? I know it's not just the Juneteenth and the Juneteenth Cookbook. I've seen you just churn them out over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, it's wild. And it's funny because I'm like, y'all don't even know what I have in my computer. Like, I have so many books. So the Juneteenth Story was my first published book, but the first book that I actually sold, here, everything within arm's reach, is Big Tune, Rise of the Dance Hall Prince. So
I've seen that.
Yeah, big tune. Have you seen it in like in stores or like in the library? I don't know, or maybe just online.
I haven't been to too many bookstores lately, but I know I've seen your posts of it
I
on
post about
Facebook.
it. Yeah. So Big Tune is my only currently published work of fiction, although everything else I have coming is fiction.
Mhm.
And it's about a little boy in early 90s Brooklyn. His family is Caribbean. They have big parties, but he's kind of shy and he does a big act for his family. So it's written in rhyme. So it's a little bit of a different vibe, but it's a 90s good time. And a lot of kids just love it. And there's a moment of dance in it too. Then I also have Oprah Winfrey, a little golden book biography,
Mhm.
which is illustrated by Tara Nicole Whitaker. By the way, I obviously did not illustrate my books. Both the Juneteenth Cookbook and the Juneteenth Story were illustrated by Sawyer Cloud. So she's an amazing illustrator. I'm glad we were able to get for both. This is illustrated by Shamar Knight Justice, who is a principal and a prolific illustrator. And Oprah Winfrey, a little golden book biography, is illustrated by Tara Nicole Whitaker, who is also like a producer for like the Proud Family and some other things. So she illustrates on the side.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, these people are amazing. But I also have 8 additional books under contract now too. So the next 2 that are coming out will be coming out in fall. I know we have Great Idea Malia, which is about a little girl named Malia who has great ideas, and her mother gets a big new job and she gets a little bit stressed. So Malia thinks it's her job to help her mother with her job, which doesn't necessarily work out the way she plans. But it's a book of, Black girl joy, and it's fun. Then I also have an early reader. So for children that are learning how to read, it's a little bit more simplified, called Black Seed Play. And it's about a family and their smart speaker. So the smart speaker listens to everybody in the family except for the youngest member, and it's a point of frustration for him. So there winds up being a little bit of the sibling tension dynamics. I'm not going to say if it is at all inspired by anybody's house that I live in right now or any children I know. But it's a very relatable story, and it's great for readers that are trying to become independent. I have actually 2 other books that are of the similar type of early readers that'll be coming out in the coming years. And then next, about a year from now, I have 2 books coming out, hopefully not the same week, but we'll see how that works out. Scared and excited on the first day of school. And so that one actually kind of speaks to, I had mentioned Alliah for long, Alliah for short, which is a book about, being able to, people being able to say your name properly. And there's a moment of that book that's really centered around this little girl, her name is Efua, and her teacher has difficulty pronouncing her name, and she kind of gets courage throughout the book, kind of through her friends to articulate her name properly in the first day of school. And then there's another book called No Cat Like Tack, about a little girl and her brand new cat that has wings and breathes fire. So that one is so I have a number of different publishers, and some other things that I'll be announcing soon too. But just incredibly blessed that it's been going as well as it has. But I think it's just more so just channeling these stories and really having the intent to kind of spread joy and just to spread truth about our lives and the fact that our children are beautiful and they are they're imaginative, they're fun, they can get into a little bit of trouble too, and it's okay because they're kids. And I just as a mom, it's just part of my personal mission to bring the privilege of childhood back to Black children, so that they can have that, and so other people know that they're entitled to it too.
Yeah, one of the questions I always get because of the documentaries I've done through the years, I'm sure you probably get to. Were you ever in an educator or a teacher, or do you think this will get you into that?
No, it's funny because I come from a family of educators, so I guess this is my
So
way
do
of
I.
of doing it, right? Build. So both of my mom's parents were educators. Both of my mom's sisters, she was a computer programmer. She was like, I can't teach those kids. Like, it's okay. I think I probably mentioned that before. And my dad's dad was an English professor, and that's how my family wound up coming to America on my dad's side, because my dad's Guyanese. So I come from a family of educators. So it's somewhere in me. I don't necessarily see myself as a teacher or professor, although my dad's like, I think you should be a professor.
I get that too.
I know. But yeah,
Lord,
I get it
do I
all the
get
time.
that.
But yeah, but the thing is, there's different ways that you can teach. It might not
Right.
necessarily be in a classroom. Although I do class visits, and which is a lot of fun actually. But it's like I'm not there every single day, so I'm like a
Mhm.
special guest, and I'm here to teach you about this thing at this one moment. And I love that. But yeah, it's like you're teaching through your content, right? There's so much that there's a lot of trash people can see on YouTube, but there's also some good quality stuff,
Right.
I think the platform that you've chosen is really wonderful because it just provides it's so accessible for people. And this is all history that otherwise would be lost, it'd be lost in
True.
people's attics and people's memories, etc. And it certainly isn't always necessarily prioritized by the institutions that kind of see themselves as the curators of history within our Buffalo community. So thank you for kind of standing in the gap to create this content and to amass like all this history so that it can be used to educate. And if that finds you to a classroom too, more power. That's
Mhm.
wonderful. But I think
Absolutely.
it's going to be a tool for people that are already in classrooms as well.
Well, lastly, let's go. I'm going to go back to you. The biggest inspiration behind this, your grandfather, Judson T.
Mhm.
Price. How's
Yes.
he doing?
He's doing all right. He's doing all right. I talked to him the other day. He's so funny. He was just
Mhm.
talking about, how the festival is going now, and because he's not as actively, directly involved, and he's just, he's still looking over, make sure
Mhm.
things are going all right.
Oh yeah.
Um, but he's good. He was visiting my parents. He was in Aruba recently. He's out on these streets, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't believe he'll be 93 in June.
Wow.
So that is truly, truly, truly a blessing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
All
yeah,
right.
but he's doing good. He's doing good.
Well, Aliyah, it has fellow Juneteenth legacy, Juneteenth baby.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure to once again have you on the Buffalo History Channel, and hopefully we will finally get our chance to meet at the
Yes,
end of
of course.
May.
Yes, yes, yes. No, absolutely, absolutely. So I'll confirm the timing when I'll be there. But I look forward to it. And thank you so much again, Doug, for having me
Mhm.
on the Black Buffalo History Channel. And congratulations for continuing to do what you do and for making sure that it's really getting the exposure that it deserves. So
Absolutely. And
kudos to you.
and before we get out of here, I don't want to let this go by before we say, how can someone obtain a copy of the Juneteenth Cookbook as well as the Juneteenth Story?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the Juneteenth Cookbook is available and the Juneteenth Story. My books are generally available at independent booksellers. Anywhere you buy books. If you buy them online, of course you can search for them there. I won't. I don't need to tell people where they can buy things online. But and I've also heard that they'll be in a pretty big retailer too. So once we, can confirm that, I can share information. But I know they're definitely available at some amazing independent retailers. I know you're in the Maryland area, right?
Yep.
So check those out. They're also for sale at Barnes and Noble, both the Juneteenth Cookbook and the Juneteenth Story too. But I definitely encourage people to support your independent booksellers. I think today's actually Independent Bookseller Day. In fact, the day that we're filming. So
Yeah. Okay.
support them first and foremost.
All right. Thanks for being
Okay.
on the Buffalo History Channel.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.